Hello students, welcome to EPG Pathashala. I am Dr. K.R. Ram Mohan, Associate Professor, Head Department of Anthropology, Sikkim University. Today we are going to talk a module on Feminism in Anthropology Part 2 from the paper Theories and Methods in Social and Cultural Anthropology. So in this Part 2, let us see what are the learning outcomes. To be able to define the concept and characteristics of feminism in anthropology, to probe into the emergence of feminist anthropology, and to be able to define the major contemporary anthropological theories which analyze the status of women and men in society. Feminism in anthropology or feminist anthropology is a discipline developed from an organic integration of feminist analysis and anthropological pursuit, which aims to eliminate the insufficiency and the partiality of the both. Feminism in anthropology or feminism anthropology is not restricted within the women's study, but it expanded to the study of gender. Gender means which includes both men and women. Gender doesn't mean that it's only men or women. And gender relationships, how at a relational level men and women have been related. So this discipline, feminist anthropology, strives to construct a broader vision of entire humanity, which includes both men and women. I mean, it is a perspective of studying women and men and their relationships. It is perhaps ironic to highlight a dissonance between feminism and anthropology. So it is not like that. So we have to see both feminism and the anthropological understanding of humanity. So feminist thinking is a new perspective in understanding the anthropological works, especially from a feminist perspective. So drawing heavily on the perception that women, including themselves, had been silenced and subordinated in many cultural domains. In general also we can see that, for example, women are not allowed in certain things. What does it mean to us in given cultures? Is it a cultural practice and is it a subordination? But especially in the realm of public, early feminist anthropologists sought to see women visible in ethnographic record and in their own worlds. So this was missing in many early anthropological works. So to take it further, the status of women and women's perspectives in anthropology, one has to also look into how feminist or feminist anthropology has taken heavily from the main domain of feminism. So we need to understand the chronological events that which led to a critical feminist thinking. So one can say that there are certain waves of feminism which have developed over a period of time in a chronological. Second wave feminism, third wave feminism kind of. And these are still relevant in lot of anthropological understanding. So the three waves of feminism are first wave, second wave and third wave of feminism. So the history of feminism is often described as three temporal waves. So the first concept originated with Irish activist Frances Power Cobb in 1884, who shared the movements as resemble the tides of the ocean. These waves of feminism are like tides of an ocean, where each wave obeys one more uniform impetus and carries the waters onward and upward along the shore. So one wave gives impetus to another wave, and another wave gives impetus to third wave, and that which reached the shore. So it is an analogy which given by Francis Power Cobb in understanding that these waves are been coming like this. I mean, the historical epochs are being one way with other waves. So when viewing feminism through the metaphor of a wave, it is important to understand that this idea of uniform and monolithic waves is often reductive and ignores multiple and often simultaneous movements within and across race, ethnicity, nationality, and social class. So in the early beginnings, it was radical feminism, which is little aggressive. So radical feminism is the most notable form of feminist wave or feminist movement. So radical feminists think liberal feminist perspectives, they are not even enough to address the centuries of individual, institutional, and systemic oppression that have ensured. So this has to be understood in two parts. First is the libertarian radical feminism, focus on personal freedom of expression, but also turns to androgyny as an option. That means they start with the personal freedom, that women do not have personal freedom of expression in a given society, in a given culture across the globe. The second aspect is the cultural radical feminism, argues that the root cause of a problem is not femininity per se, that women as per se, or biological option as per se, but the low value, the low social value that patriarchy has attained to feminine qualities. This can be seen in literature, including Shakespeare's writings. Frailty, thy name of women. You know, all this frailty means women are weak, women are this thing, women are that thing. So that kind of a value system which have been assigned to women as a whole due to feminine qualities. That means the biological category. So if society placed a higher value on feminine qualities, then there could be no gender oppression, or there could be less gender oppression, or perhaps it could be more or less an egalitarian way of these things. In this way, so the concepts of androgyny, femininity, masculinity, and multiple forms of gender expression have come through because women are biological sex. Women as a categorical, that they are all reduced to biological organism, and the whole social construction is centered around that body, which has given a low status in many cultures of the society. And there are different, in the course of time in history until now, we have most varied views of feminism. So feminism started with the questioning of male authority. Feminism started with the low status of women. But today, if you look at the whole feminist thought and understanding and their theoretical approach, we could see an array of feminist understandings. They are liberal feminism, socialist Marxist feminism, radical feminism, psychoanalytical feminism, existential feminism, individual feminism, cultural feminism, postmodern feminism, relative of rational feminism. Now, being understood that there are different ways of feminism having their own attack on one particular body of knowledge. Psychoanalytic feminism questions the whole Freudian analysis of men and women. Marxist analysis questions the capitalistic class and how women were treated, though they are the producers and significant contributions towards the capitalistic class. So that body of researchers take that perspective and question the whole structural aspect of a capitalistic mode of system in that society, how women were placed, how women were taught. And psychoanalytic feminism questions the Freudian analysis of sexual orientation, Freudian analysis of personality types. So in that way, there is an array of feminist critique which has come from within, and all the scholars have their own vantage points and their arguments. Now, feminist anthropologists first reacted again is the fact that the whole discussion of women as a class in anthropological literature had been restricted to the areas of three things: marriage, kinship, and family. Beyond these three domains, women are not discussed, because in a marriage, there should be two genders in a conventional sense. In kinship, to trace the kinship, in conventional sense, you need to have two genders. In a family, you need to have two genders. So in that sense, women are being centered or only discussed in anthropological literature in these three social institutions. So feminist scholars are very critical in understanding or using the word called man, man. They say it is ambiguous and sometimes referring to only men. But in a literal sense, from a biological point of view, Homo sapiens as a whole, and when we say it's a study of man, it should refer both simultaneously. That is, they are very critical when we say it is a study of man. What is man? Man doesn't represent the other gender. So they say human beings. So man should be replaced with human beings. When we say anthropology is a science of man, some feminists are very critical of this discipline of study of man. Rather, they say it should be a science of human beings, which includes men and women. So second way of feminist anthropologists were reacting against or critical about Durkheim's notion of that society as a static system that can always too easily be broken down into inherent dichotomies. Now, feminist scholars were very critical in saying that how this system is dynamic. Okay, being critical of Durkheim's model of that society is static. So the dynamic theory on Marx's idea that social relations always come down to a praxis. Praxis means practice. So theory is different, praxis is different. That which puts into culmination of practice. And on the other hand, post-structuralist feminist anthropologists are also critical of cultural feminism, which how cultures divide men and women. And they argue that the oppressive powers under which traditional values were created. So one has to look into what kind of oppressive mechanism is there in a given society. So though the early women anthropologists are not to the core feminist anthropologists, like Ruth Benedict, Margaret Mead, Eleanor Leacock, Louis Lampier, and anthropologists like Sherry Ortner, Margaret Conkey, Hughes, Rubin, and Abu Lagold have critically examined and questioned the role of women in the society. And they said to the anthropological world that you cannot undermine women's contribution in all social spheres, be it economic, be it religious, be it political, be it in the everyday life. So, subordination of women is the main central concept around the feminist anthropological argument is focused on the analysis and development of theory to explain in detail the subordination of women, which we all generally see that it is universal, it is cross cultural, and it all started with the Marxian analogy of binary oppositions that men and women kind of a thing. Men are in the capitalistic society. So Marxist theory appealed to feminist anthropologists in 19 as early as in 90s because there is no particular theory which accounts for the oppression of women in its endless variety and monotonous similarity. That means no studies are giving the significant contributions of women in economic spheres and in a capitalist society. Perhaps for the first time, Marxists. So cross-culturally and throughout the history with anything, like Marx could only give an explanation of class oppression but not the gender oppression. So the Marxist model explains that the subordination of women in the capitalist society, both in terms of their reproductive role or we can say the reproduction of the labor. That means women in a family are the real people who are producing children, and these children are the prospective laborers for the capitalist. And the capitalist is not bothered to reduce the number of the children. The more number of children comes from a family, the less he can pay as wages. Or, and women's value, either it is unpaid or underpaid labor, which has come through only in capitalistic societies. Now, taking another level, what is the domestic power of women? Do women have power in domestic areas? How does it be understood? So Lampier believes that females are subjected to universal subordination, granted. They are not without individual power. But these two women anthropologists emphasize the domestic power of women. And this power, according to this theoretical framework, is manifested in individually negotiated relations based in the domestic sphere, but influencing and even determining male activity in public sphere. In a sense that perhaps women do not have power in social life, but at least they can control something in the individual household. But they're very critical whether women do really have that power at a small individual family level. Now, let us look into the distinction between what is sex and what is gender. To put it simply, sex means biological term, male and female, biological categories. Gender means culturally constructed man, woman, masculine, feminine. So the use and development of this concept gender has been a buzzword for the dichotomies between male and female, man and woman, towards a search for the universals across all the cultures. Whether can one have a universal law in understanding these gender relations? So gender, as it came to replace the term woman in all the anthropological discussions. So it helped to free the issue of inequality from the basic biological connotations of male and female categories. So this new discussion on gender brought more individual action between the ideology of feminist thinking and the immediate material conditions. Now, let us see the concept of identity, in a sense, gender identity. So, everybody has an identity, social identity. So, the focus on identity and the difference has become the merging focus for feminist anthropology. This means that there is a focus on social categories such as age, occupation, religion, status in a given society. Along with this, power. Who holds the power? To what extent one holds power is an important component of analysis, since the construction and enactment of identity occurs through these discourses, which gives us whether somebody holds a power or not. Another important theory has emerged in feminist thinking is queer theory. The word term queer means where, loosely understood as those who do not fall under the heteronormity of male and female. It is a blurred identity. Whether it could be, sometimes it is lumped together all this LGBT, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, can be lumped together as queer. That means you are not understandable because you don't fall under, you are not either or, either male or female, but you are somewhere having a blurred identity. So, which you are a deviant of this normal gendered distinction. So, within this, many identities which have come up, feminist anthropologists, they are not just a simply arguing for the sake of argument. They want to come out with a specific approach or methods in dealing these specific issues. Now they want to see how a role is constructed, how the status is there, and what are the significant contributions by women in all the societies. So starting with Marxist analysis, which is apparently the preferred theoretical framework to analyze the state of affairs, whether gender is equal or it is asymmetry, or the status of women in capitalistic economic societies. So, taking Marxist analysis further, they maintain that the oppression of women supports capitalism in two levels. First, women serve as the means for reproducing the labor force. Additionally, women's unpaid or underpaid labor serves to help and defray and conceal the overall cost of operating a capitalist economy. Thereby, the bourgeoisie gets more and more profit. See, if you look at even in contemporary society, there are no equal wages for men and women, and there is a rationality by the capitalist. They say that men's work is different and women's work is different. That is why there is a difference of wage structure. Women cannot do hard work, men do only some hard works. Women's work is so we are paid according to her labor, which shows unequal payments, which has some relevance with Marxist understanding of when it comes to inequality in the wage structure, though the amount of work is same between men and women. And the structuralist approach of understanding these inequalities that men and women, the inequality is constructed even at the structural level. So at a given point of time, the inequalities exist because of the structure prescribes that there is an inequality. So now all these things are put together in ethnographic accounts and theory, and they want to challenge these enshrined beliefs starting from human origins, saying that man the hunter. So feminist anthropologists are very, very critical, and they're vocal of this model as man the hunter, and he is seen as the driving force for human evolution, and where women's role has been only subsidized as productive, only reproductive role, starting with the human sapiens sapiens. So taking further, feminists are also critical of psychoanalytic understanding of human psyche or human personality or sexual orientations. So they debate on the kinship, gender relations, and they say that how Freud can come out with these sexual in terms of Oedipus complex and Electra complex. Now, being said all these things, there is some kind of limitations with these feminist approaches towards understanding women's role. So with this critique, the biases and assumptions that anthropologists try to reject, that male preference is given or androgenic centric ethnographic works. It is only the middle class female anthropologists are focusing too intensively on the issues of gender. And they have forgotten the bigger issues of racism, racial inequalities, unequal distribution of health among the social classes within a society. Instead of focusing a larger issue, the criticism was female anthropologists are more particular only with the status of women. This is a biggest attack on women anthropologists. Now, there is again a racial difference between white and other racial anthropologists. Now, many anthropologists says that women anthropologists are only picking up the most minute issues within a society, and they are politicizing the whole issues within this framework, which is becoming problematic to other levels. Scholars within the domain of feminist anthropology is to make an attempt on the issues surrounding the inequality and the status of women in societies. So it is not just only questioning the status, but they are equipped with well theoretical and methodological equipment to bring out these inequalities in the society. For that, feminist scholars have taken different standpoints in their argument, and they have also been influenced by the historical currents of feminist movement, the first wave, the second wave, and the third wave movements, which have attacked categorically in each and every discipline. Scholars who are influenced and they want to take the light of starting from Marxist analysis, how women were placed in a capitalist society, the structuralist aspects of a society, why women have a subordinate life. It is due to the structural aspects of the society. Some take on the psychoanalytic aspects, that the Freudian analysis of gender-based socialization, Freudian analysis of sexual orientation, where it is completely a male-dominated endeavor, and all the ethnographic works have been produced by male ethnographers who did not give enough importance to the larger contribution of women in all social spheres of life. Being said this, notwithstanding the rich contributions by feminist scholars in anthropological writing, there is a criticism saying that feminist anthropologists are only focusing one particular issue, that is only women, ignoring the larger problems like social inequalities, distribution of unequal wealth, racial issues, and other pertinent social problems that are taking place in the society. They could have focused more while studying the women's issues. So, studying the historical currents of feminism and the approaches of these anthropologists who have taken different points in understanding women's situation, how they are situated in this social world, gives us more insights and a wider appreciation and apprehension of gender, gender identity, gender relations in all anthropological works.